Hello and welcome back to In Service to Transformation with me, your host, Claire Darnell. This week we meet with the lovely Karoliina Hellén. Karoliina, I am glad to say, is a friend of mine, but also is the most majestic human. She is born from a long line of shamans. She lives on a little province just outside of Finland, it's a part of Finland. And she is a sexological body worker. And she's landed in that space through a long journey of her own personal healing and experiences of healing and being a healer. And so I'm really excited to see what she's going to bring for you all today. So let me introduce Karoliina. Hey, Karoliina, good to have you here.
Hello, Claire. Thank you for inviting me in here. This is amazing to sit here and to discover layers and layers of transformation.
Thank you so much. And I wish you guys could see because Karoliina just has the most beautiful smile and it just warms your heart as soon as you see it. One of the first things that I was quite taken by with Karoliina was her face. Like it's the most open, beautiful and inviting face. I think I said that you have a spectacular face, or I think that was how I described you. And yeah, I think it just is really a mirror to her soul and the depth of wisdom and knowing that she holds. So yeah, let's dive in, Karoliina, and yeah, excavate some of this wisdom for the listeners.
Thank
So
you.
I always start at the beginning, and like for some of us, there's not really a beginning, right? There's kind of just this unraveling. But I'd like to start by asking, was there kind of a defining moment or a period of time in your life that led you to knowing you wanted to start searching out some form of transformation for self?
Yeah, I actually think that even though we have, or I have this long lineage of shamans in my bloodline and have been growing up with these healing practices, because of a lot of personal childhood trauma, I actually didn't do a lot of personal work as younger, but in 2012, I was kicked roughly into a journey with cancer. And that was kind of the part of my life where actually I usually say like cancer saved my life
Mm,
because it actually opened up me to see all the layers of my personal life and also um, not just my personal life but also our family lineage healing that needed to be done in order for me to actually start living instead of surviving and devoting myself to dying.
mm. Wow. The way you say that, you even make dying sound beautiful. So much.
Dying is actually the safest thing to do. And it is beautiful. And
Mm,
actually the cancer journey also healed me from the fear of death.
mm,
As I had a couple of moments of where I was clinically dead. And the experience of that was so expansive and so beautiful in so many ways. And I can feel even in this moment when I speak about it, like there is this inner peace that steps in
mm,
as I go back into feeling into that space. And there is a certain longing as well,
mm.
but not in the way of that I'm done with life or that I want to die. But there is this feeling in me that even though the death would come in the next 5 minutes, I would be ready.
Yes, yes.
So there is no resistance to that experience because it's the most beautiful experience of life.
Mm. Yeah, and I think so many of us really at the root are so frightened of dying, right? This is why we hold on so tight. But when you get to this realization that, well, everything's energy and we don't really die, we're infinite. And so I guess looking death truly in the eye in that way through a cancer journey would really show you that truth, coming back from that. So how did that impact you? So you kind of had that journey and you've evaded death, right? So what happens next when you have that kind of experience?
Oh, so how to make a long story short?
Don't make it too.
um, my first experience of death during that cancer journey was maybe the most profound one.
Mm,
And in that moment of when I was thrown back into this space of where actually all the information is, like I see it almost like being the halls of Amenti or Akasha, where it's just a huge library of things, and you can just pick and choose like what do I want to open and rewatch or to beam into. Um, and during that experience, I was opened like several files, I could say, kind of, where I was shown memories that I had pressed down into my body and forgotten because
mm,
of the, um, like it's those experiences that I had as a child was so tremendous that if I wouldn't have suppressed those memories, I would not have been surviving at all.
yeah,
So that's our beautiful body's capacity actually to serve life. So it's not just a coping mechanism, it's actually driving for life
yeah,
to having us to go through this whole experience of it all.
mm,
Um, and during that experience, what came to me, I speak about it as a voice, but I guess it's more of, just um, awareness of something bigger than me, myself,
mm,
that was speaking to me that these are the things you need to look into and to really focus on healing if you want to survive this.
yeah,
And I also got that the same voice that was speaking about, like if you want to release this life, now it's the time.
mm,
But if you want to leave, you need to start living. And that was like
wow,
the most, like the line that really stuck into my mind, like stop the surviving. It's time to leave.
yeah,
And that was a moment like I was at home and I was having a pneumonia during those cancer treatments. And I had really high fever that night. I had already been in hospital for a couple of weeks and I wanted to come home because I just was not willing to die in a hospital room. Like I was just saying like I come back into the morning back for the IV medication, but I just want to sleep one night at home, because in some way I think I was already knowing that this was the night when I was going to release my body.
yes,
And yeah, like when I came back into my body, smashing back into that painful body experience of mine where there was like not a single cell in my body that wasn't hurting at that moment. It was that rough. So basically, what I was going through was like, just one more breath, just one more breath. You can do this, like just one more breath. And my husband had also awakened to this experience of that there was someone in the room. And he was trying to wake me up, like, can you feel it? Like there is someone in the room. And I thought that I had spoken to him, like, yeah, I know. But I had been quiet. And in that moment when he put the lamps on and my mother was knocking on our bedroom door, like, is everything okay? I smashed into my body and my husband was just like, oh my God, you are burning up. You need to go back to the hospital. And I was like, no, just give me a Panadol. Everything will be okay. So there was no, I'm not going to the hospital. I go in the morning. Just give me something to put the fever down and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
So there was this deep sense of knowing that even though every single doctor was saying like, we can't really do nothing, we can't do anything to actually get you well. Like this is just, we are just elongating this part of your life where you get to prepare your family to actually your passing.
Yeah.
And I just knew like, no, this is not the case.
Yeah. What a
I
gift.
get to actually choose.
Wow. Yeah. And, you know, I'm so glad that you chose life in that moment when you were given that choice. Because when you spoke of, you know, like goosebumps when you're talking about coming back into that pain-addled body, you know, and like making a choice, just one breath, just one breath. I can just imagine what a painful choice that was, because it could be so easeful to just choose the death portal.
Yeah.
But yeah, you chose life, and that whole mechanism of what it is to be human, and that you know, where we suppress these pieces, these, as you tremendous, you didn't call it traumatic, but you called it a tremendous experience in childhood. And we do suppress them, and we do, you know, keep them embodied almost within the tissues of our body. And I was just, what you brought to life for me there, no pun intended, was this like how the human spirit, the body, will always prioritize life, always will prioritize living. And, you know, I've seen it watching my own aunt go through the death portal and really being ready for death. But her human body was just wanting to keep living, you know? And yeah, it's tremendous, really. And for me, like just listening to you and having witnessed her, it really gave me, and actually having gone through a really painful illness myself with sepsis and very touch and go a few years back, having that experience of knowing, like my will to survive is so much stronger than my will to check out and go. Like no matter what, I almost have to just follow this will to survive. I'm here for something bigger. And I absolutely love how it kind of touched on this voice, this presence was live. If you want to be here, these are the things you need to heal and live. So it gave you a map, right? It gave you a pathway.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it wasn't like, okay, next day back to normal, business as usual. I know what I need to do. Tick, tick, tick. But what,
No.
I mean, you have this like to-do list, right? Of things to heal. So what did you start to do?
Oh, this was actually quite interesting because, you know, like I had disconnected from a lot of teachings from my childhood and didn't really recall in that sense a lot of things beside the connection to nature. But what started to happen to me was that every single morning when I woke up, there was like kind of like a download that just snapped into my awareness of like, today you do this, today you do this, like all weird kind of stuff that I didn't even know that was actually a practice. You know, like I had not done yoga before, and I simply started to get these patterns of breathing, like how to do certain breathing practices that would like reduce my pain or to higher my energy levels or whatever the thing was for that day, or energetic surgery and stuff like that. I laid in the sauna with lava stones on my body and doing like surgery on myself, just picking out shit out of my inner organs and clearing out my lymph nodes and stuff like that, which for someone would kind of, like come with this thought of like, are you insane? But if I was insane, that kind of saved my life as well. But I did feel like every single day when I got this kind of download, like this is the focus today. Today you do this, and today you do this. It was actually, I could feel every time the energy starting to move in a new way in my body. And I noticed like how actually this whole death experience opened myself in such a deeper way into life. Like I started to come back into this childlike mind where I started to see these smallest freaking things in nature. Like I could stay like my own force in the middle of the forest road and simply watching ants moving back and forth and carrying stuff, or getting stuck in just noticing a drop of water hanging from a leaf and getting totally sucked by that beauty of like how amazingly beautiful this world is.
Yes.
And that took me into a place where I noticed like how devoted I had been for suffering and for focusing on all the things that are fucked up in this world. And totally forgetting all these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experiences that are like in front of our faces every freaking day.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I know a little bit about you, right? Because we're friends, but this was really you almost going back to full circle to the wonderment of your childhood and that nature child that you really were. Because I know from other conversations we've had, you had a real connection with animals, with birds. So I guess this was you being directed back to how you were before harm was caused, or before we created these stories and scripts that told us life is painful, and therefore, there's part of us that's attracted to looking for more pain, and there's also part of us that's trying to avoid the pain, and we get stuck in that quagmire, that confusion really for most of our lives. Many of us will appreciate that. But going back to that, how did that start to serve you? What started to change?
I just want to rewind a little bit back. Like my most traumatic experiences in my childhood started as I was 2 years old. So I didn't even have that connection to nature just yet. But I felt like I spent a lot of time with my grandfather and grandmother, and they lived quite a lot at the cabin in the woods, and later on they moved like a whole time living in the woods. And that was for me the sanctuary. That was the place where I actually, even with the dysfunctional love that was present even there, I found that nature was the one and most profound connection for me to life. Like that was for me safety. Like even when in the woods where there is wolves and bears and all this stuff, I felt more safe roaming alone as 4-year-old in the woods than being at home. So that was kind of when I started to notice back these elements of nature during my cancer journey, that I think that was kind of the pathway where I was guided back into safety.
Yes.
In the nature, I can feel everything. I can feel myself, but I can also feel that I am held.
Yes. I just feel like I just want to drink that in. It's just, I can feel so much ease in my body when you say that. When there's, and I think part of my own spiritual awakening was really similar. It was, when I stopped anesthetizing myself with drink and drugs, it was like somebody had taken these blinkers off, and all of a sudden I could see trees and I could see birds in the trees, and I could see dragonflies and butterflies and ladybirds, and everything felt so bright. I remember walking down the street one day and just looking up, and the sun was coming through a tree. And I literally just, it was like it was the first time I'd ever seen a tree, like because I'd been walking a lot like you through life, completely obsessed with just feeding my addiction and addictions. And yeah, it just lit me up. And my higher power, however we want to define it, was very much nature. And nature started to show up in ways that really was a guiding kind of principle for me. I remember very shortly after I stopped using alcohol and drugs, I would be outside having a sneaky cigarette. I was still a smoker. And nature started to interfere with my process of smoking. So I was laughing. I was telling somebody about this story the other day. I was smoking roll-up cigarettes, and a gust of wind, I would be trying to roll a cigarette, and a gust of wind would come and just like blow the cigarette out of my hand. And then there was another time, and I was sort of sat under the eaves of the house, and it was raining, and I was really an addict. I'm smoking this cigarette, and I'm sat under the eaves of the house, and then a drop of rain, literally, as I have it in my mouth, on the end of the cigarette, and extinguish the cigarette, And I remember those like few incidents, I was just thinking, I'd look up to the sky, to, the nature gods, and just say, okay, I hear you. You don't want me to keep killing myself. And I started to kind of pray, I guess. I went into a process of every time I had a craving, I would say to nature, to the universe, like, please remove this craving. And they delivered. They took away my cravings. And I haven't smoked for nearly 13 years. And so it's that wonderment of nature, that holding of Mother Earth, of Gaia, of whatever you want to define her as, that is just so divine, right? It just creates so much safety. And that's what came to mind. Yum. So back to these pathways that you started to follow. So you started to delve into yoga, and you started to delve into nature. And were there other things that really kind of started to work for you and started to move you forward in terms of your trajectory?
Well, one big part that came alive was also, like when we speak about addictions, and I started to look into my addictive patterns as well. And I noticed like I have been actually hiding behind addictions my whole fucking life.
Yeah.
Everything from painkillers to alcohol, to sex, shopping, later on violence, like straightforward violence. I was really dedicated into using sports and training as something that kicked me into such a high levels of adrenaline that I was like constantly hijacked by that adrenaline. And I have like caused so much harm for my body. Like I don't know if I have any part of my body that is not broken because of these choices. And during that time with cancer, it's like all these parts of my broken bones and scarred bones actually started to like really hurt. They were just, it was almost like, like dropping in one puzzle bite at a time, like here and here and here and here and here and here. Can you see it now? And it was quite fascinating to start to look at all the pains that were kind of hiding behind all the addictional patterns. And when I spoke about also this like addiction to sex, for example, was one huge part of my journey, because obviously I'm someone who experienced sexual trauma from quite early age, and that's been kind of repetitive pattern of my life all the way into this safest relationship that I have ever been, and that's in my current marriage. Blessings to my husband, who is amazing, and how much he has done by me trying to fuck everything up, and still he's just been there. I just got blown away by that realization. Like I'm not sure I would have been able to stand by watching someone constantly hurting themselves and hurting him in that journey as well. So something that got really visible for me was the ways that I had been also hurting myself in the regarding of my sexuality and my femininity and all these sensual layers of myself, like where I had also used the violence to violate myself into adrenaline patterns. And I started to get like really, really focused on understanding my sensuality, understanding my somatic body, understanding my own sexual identity, my cravings, my needs, my desires, and really unshaming was a huge part of that. And I guess that's still something that is every now and then it pops up, and it comes in with this nagging voice of like, oh, do you really dare? Like, so that was enlightening me into this path of where I actually started to focus quite a lot in yoga, because that took me in a safe way into my body. And through pranayama and meditation, I got a little bit more near in these experiences and memories and all this information that I was carrying in my body, and opening me slowly up to these deeper, darker layers of what it is to be in a woman's body and being deeply embodied woman. And that's been kind of like leading me slowly from studying yoga, studying mindfulness, studying meditation and breath work and somatic experiencing, and going into deepening my understanding in sexology and neurology. And like it's just like being a constant opening, more of opening. And that's where I'm at the moment as well. Like even in my professional life, it's all that I have been going through, experiencing myself, experiencing that I haven't got enough of support from the medical system, and coming back into myself. Like, okay, if I'm not getting help from outside of myself, what can I do to bring myself back into safety, back into the experience of wholeness, while we never are broken anyway. But there is this splittered experience of the mind where we can experience being broken and faulty and wrong and these shaming patterns, and then slowly coming more and more back home and understanding that there is so many people that actually are going through the same kind of experiences, while the medical system is offering knives and pills to remove more parts of yourself instead of calling back more parts of yourself.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you spoke earlier of doing the spiritual surgery, like really removing these parts of you and clearing the body. And obviously a lot of the work that you have been doing up until now and continue to do is nervous system healing. And so there's so much evidence to show that so many autoimmune diseases, mental health conditions are directly related to nervous system irregulation, and I think this can be like whatever way you choose, whatever modality you choose, just choose one and try, something that's going to soothe your nervous system. So many of us reach, as you spoke of in our addictions, towards the gym to change the way we feel. And Lord knows I've done it to the point of injury so many times in the past. And there is a place for physical fitness, absolutely, in your armory of well-being tools. But flooding your adrenals constantly with, a hyperactive effort in the gym is not always the answer. So I absolutely love that you really touched on that. And ultimately, you also said you're still in that process of opening, right? Constantly.
Yes, constantly. And actually, I had just last year this huge epiphany of understanding like if we would look me before my cancer journey, I was like a beef. I was like, if we could say, like in my prime years of, I was strong and muscular and all of that. But inside of me, I was so splittered that I, if someone would have asked me like, who are you? I wouldn't probably have been able to answer more than with my name.
Yeah.
And coming into this realization of that, then my focus was actually simply punishing myself, like more pain. No pain, no gain was kind of the mentality where I was constantly like gaining, like going deeper, getting more strong, like everything was just like getting into being more of something that someone else can receive by looking at me
Yeah.
instead of feeling myself in, you know. And I was at the gym last year and I was like smiling through the whole gym pass, and I was just like, oh, this feels so different when the focus is actually loving myself
Yes.
instead of like punishing myself and kicking my ass.
Yes, woman. I hear you. Yeah, my own fitness journey through this year was exactly the same. There was a childlike joy that would come over me in the gym, and my trainer would be like, I just totally see your inner child when you're here, because I would get something wrong, or I'd, fall short of the count, and I would just start laughing. Whereas that would have been the thing that would have like had me saying, this is not good enough. You're not working hard enough, and you're never going to be skinny if you don't do this, like the whole goal shift was completely different. So yeah, I hear you. I hear you. That's a beautiful pearl of wisdom, is to, yeah, just almost give your body the credit for even showing up, right? And trying to
Yeah.
do one rep, let alone, and like shift the focus from, yeah, trying to how we're going to be perceived by others on the outside, and actually how does it make us feel on the inside that we're showing up for ourselves.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm. So I'm quite keen to kind of, so you've taken this journey, you've had this awakening of your sensuality, your sexuality, you started to really become more of an embodied woman, and you've started to find your way really back into a pathway of becoming a healer, I'm assuming at this point, as we do. So where did your journey go? Like, you're probably one of the most highly qualified people I know. And I know that you've been a yoga instructor, you're a body worker in terms of different massage therapies and treatments. And you obviously have the shamanic wisdom knowledge that's been handed down to you. You've been part of a shamanic training. There's so much, and the sexology. So could you, where do we go from here? What would you like to talk about? What lights you up in terms of being able to speak about what you're doing now?
Mm. Like there has been this part of me at some point where I was like kind of frustrated of like, how many things do I need to kind of go through? Like, can I just like focus on one fucking thing and make it happen? But this is also kind of a new realization, and where I have learned to ease into this was also just like recent epiphany. It's like, ah, angels singing and the heavens opening.
Love those moments.
And realizing like how all of these parts of these different trainings, my background and all of it is kind of linked into each other.
Yeah.
So everything is serving my current state of where I work with myself and where I work with my clients.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful mishmash of, like not just having one tool pack of things to be offering to my clients, but actually there is capacity of working in more in the hierarchy of healing, like addressing the whole human instead of focusing in one tiny part of that humanness.
Yes.
And I think that is where our medical system is failing us currently, is because it's super focusing on one part of the problem, where the problem usually is just a symptom of a bigger issue that is hiding somewhere else than just in that place of your physical body.
Yeah, it's like the medical system definitely has its place in healing journeys, but it's actually just looking at the mechanics of the body, and there's very little. I think it's changing slightly as we start to look more to Eastern medicine and other alternative indigenous ways of healing. And you starting to see some health practitioners within the traditional medical system nod towards those, plagiarize even in some cases. But ultimately, there's so much focus on the mechanics of the body versus the root cause and the spiritual root cause, or the background elements that might have laid the pathway to becoming a physical ailment. So yeah, I completely agree with you, 100%.
Yeah. And I do see how, like, when there is psychosomatic symptoms of something, and I see that a lot, at least here, it's quite a lot of like used as shaming for you just being a nutcase. So
Yeah.
there's nothing really wrong with you. It's just a psychosomatic symptom, but nothing is just a psychosomatic symptom. It's a whole human experience.
Mm.
So nothing that comes through as a voice of the body. The body's love language is messaging through like what it needs, what it desires, what's like the body is constantly speaking.
Yes.
But because we have come so long away from the body and the connection into the nature, we have stopped listening into these subtle senses and voices of the body, like, hey, I actually need rest.
Yes.
I need food. You need to pee. Like all these things are just diluted and disappeared. And I think yes, it can be helpful to schedule your food into your phone to have reminders, while that also is actually your body's natural sense of telling you, like, now we need to eat, now we need to sleep, now we need to drink. But we just can't hear those voices anymore, so the body needs to be louder.
Yeah.
And it gets louder through these bigger experiences, like for myself, the cancer experience as well. I had been not listening to myself and my body for so many years until it actually needed to kill me, to put me down,
Yeah.
to smash me back into the body and take a deep look.
Absolutely. And you do. I remember I read a book. I think even as a teenager, I read this book, and it was called Why Me, Why This, Why Now? And it was about how the body will even cause injury. So it might cause you to fall down a flight of stairs and break a leg to render you immobile, to take a good look at your life, or it
Yeah.
will cause physical symptoms that result in illness. And I think that's really fascinating. And as you were saying, the body will whisper, whisper, whisper. And if we can't hear it, it will end up shouting, and it will render us immobile and near dead till we listen. I feel I just want to speak to it's I think it's hard, right? The thing that dropped in for me is there's an entire sort of construct and society that's set up around us to make us work harder, faster, to override, to be present, fixed hours of working, for instance, Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. 3 meals a day, eat your 5 veg, like all of these constructs that we are expected to live within, which actually are gross distortions of colonialism, capitalism, consumerism, all of the isms. And I think it can feel like, but confusing to those who are just embarking on trying to find a different way to live, because how do you separate the construct from it's the very material of our lives, right? We're machinated into these processes. We become one with the process and the expectation. And I don't think we all have the benefit of being able to opt out, right, of that construct fully. I wonder how, yeah, I mean, what's your viewpoint on that? How can people take that opportunity just to find that pause for a moment, to find that quiet? Do you have any nuggets of wisdom?
I would say that taking like even a short moment daily, simply to sit down, hands on your body, if possible on naked skin, to really feel the touch of your hands, to really feel your body breathing. Like if you can't feel your breath happening towards your hands on your belly or on your back or even on your vulva or your legs, you are not breathing.
Yes.
So that doesn't like it's all in small steps. Like we can't learn to listen to ourselves if we have been like zooming out of our human experience and simply being enslaved in these old constructions.
Yes.
It's almost impossible if you haven't any experience of any embodiment work from before to actually straightly jumping into just zooming out of the construction and creating a new reality around it. So I would say the simplest thing is to stop for a moment. Like it doesn't need to be many minutes. It doesn't need to take long, and it doesn't need to cost your pants off. Simply staying with your body, hands-on body, breathing, feeling whatever you feel, and giving it a voice. That's like one of the most that I feel also people struggle with, giving the feeling a voice, like because it doesn't make sense when it comes as crawling or as it comes as just, like pounding or whatever wants to come through. And that's what the body is asking for, to be recognized, to be felt, to be held.
Yes. Yes, to be witnessed, to be present with it. It's
Yeah.
so true. It's spot on. I've noticed because I've just recently started to share some real beginner tips via my Instagram on how to be more embodied. And yeah, the response to it has been really strong. There's been like a real, this is great. I really needed this. And could you provide us with a beginner's guide to, how to feel more embodied? And I think it does show how disembodied and how disassociated so many of us have become. And I definitely, I have been there myself in the past in a state of complete disassociation. And, sometimes we do just need a little bit of guidance to be able to understand what it is to drop back in and start to listen. So yeah, I think practitioners like yourself, like myself, and like so many others, showing the way, I feel that's such a benefit. But also you don't, as you say, have to spend lots of money. It is simply a case of putting your hands on your body and allowing yourself to breathe. I say to people, even if when you wake up in the morning, before you even get out of your bed, just check in with your body and say out loud, how are you today? And it will speak back to you. There will be something there, a communication. I think, did you speak at the beginning of the call about these downloads that started to come in as you were healing? Same thing happens to me. So when we come into that stillness, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll have a really clear, like, this is today's direction. And that
Yeah.
wasn't there before. I had no connection with spirit, with anything outside of myself. I was running completely on my, the ego, my mind. But these downloads are different. They hit different. They're in the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
they
actually
take interaction.
one of the tips that I often give my clients is
Mm.
that even though you work in a traditional working place, put your alarm to go off 15 minutes, the usual time, and take that time as simply feeling into your body, touching your body and feeling into whatever you feel and breathing, because that will be giving the whole tone of the day.
Yes.
It's set there. Many of my clients have super much resistance to this, like, no, I get up so early already. I'm like, but what is that 15 minutes? And if you think of what kind of imprint that puts on your day and keeps you more energized, more focused, more embodied, more in the zone of safety, does that 15 minutes then count as something that is taken away from you?
No, it's such an investment, right?
Yeah.
Such value.
So simple.
It's so simple. And it really reminds me actually of in younger years when my daughter was going through a phase of being really dysregulated and really fretful about going to school. And I started a morning kind of love bomb. So I would climb into bed with her. So she would be really difficult to get ready for school, to leave the house. It was too much stimulation for her, I think, too quickly. So it felt so counterintuitive, but I thought, okay, I'm going to climb into bed with her and I'm going to spoon and we're going to co-regulate. I benefited just as much, I'm sure, but we would spend 15 minutes just cuddling. And then it would be like, okay, baby, it's time to get up now. And actually, the morning would go so smoothly because she'd had that moment of time, that connection and that co-regulation piece that actually I think that's what she was seeking in the tantrums and the perceived naughtiness, that I was seeing in the not wanting to be dressed. And she was playing for time, by investing that time up front, we kind of benefited. So yeah, I think ultimately that's what the body's asking for, right? It's asking for us to spoon it, to give it some love, to cuddle it, like the inner child inside is saying,
Yes.
just spend some time with me, please, before we rush around.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. It's a great investment.
Yes, 100%. A great piece of advice. So in terms of your current offerings, as we said, there's loads of strings to your bow, but I guess how can people work with you? What are you
Currently,
offering at the moment?
uh, currently I'm offering one-on-one sessions, both in my physical clinic, but also on distance. And there is a couple of different ways you can work with me. Either way, on a little bit of a fast starter that is a 4 weeks container with one call each week to go into kind of kickstarting your system back into safety, like starting to create that sense of safety, for starting to feel more into yourself. And there is also possibilities to work on a longer containers, like 3, 6, or 12 months. And how those containers look like is so individual. Like I can't really say like what is that thing that we work on, but a lot of my clients do have trauma background, and my specialty is to guide you back into the safety of your own body and your own experience, and starting to cultivate that more inner radiance to becoming yourself to becoming, or you are already yourself because you are not broken, you are a whole all along, but simply starting to call back those pieces of you that have been lost in the time sands. And yeah, it's kind of like a homecoming, I would say.
Yeah.
And there's also coming a group journey, but that's not really ready to be launched yet. And it will be a small women's container where we will be focusing also on the coming back into safety and ownership of our own bodies and our own sexual expressions, sensual expressions.
Yeah. And I think there's so many benefits, right, to working one-to-one and similarly to working in groups. So you see such a different experience to that kind of co-created space in a group, and similarly to that intimacy that we can achieve or receive when we're in a one-to-one setting. So I think both are so nourishing. And I think even as a facilitator, it's such an expansive and a different way of working for us too. And there is such an element of co-creation in there. I love the way that you're mentioning you just work intuitively, and ultimately whatever's moving through in the dynamic between you and that individual is what needs to come through.
Yeah. And I do always look into these containers as looking into the individual kind of focus or intention, where do we want to create a change, and looking into it through the lens of hierarchy of healing to see that we can support everything from brain health to gut health to embodiment, nervous system. So it's quite a lot.
Yes. I mean, you even have human design in your armory, right? So there's like
Yeah.
literally so many tools that you can weave in.
Yeah.
And I know that you have recently been a part of hosting a shamanic event as well, and a retreat weekend. And do you have anything like that in the pipeline?
There is under creation me being part of a feminine mystery school at Gaia Life in Sweden. And I'm going to be at the shamanic gathering at Gaia also in August, in the first weekend of August, I think it is.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's a beautiful place and amazing place, amazing people as well. So that's something that I look really, really much forward to be working with. And there I'm focusing more in the bringing the wild woman back online.
Wow. That's going to be a
Yeah.
treat. Look forward to hearing more about that. And so in terms of connection with you, I know that you're really active on your Instagram page. I know that you have a website. I'm going to link those in the bio for the podcast when it goes live. Are there, I guess I always tend to wrap up these podcasts with this question, and I'll try not to fall over my own question. In terms of the healing journey that people may be in or wanting to embark upon, I always feel it's really nice to ask my guests, would they have any suggestions or any insight and wisdom that they would like to share with somebody who might be embarking upon a journey of healing and transformation?
I think I have said this a couple of times already on this podcast, but I think the most important thing is to drop into this awareness of knowing deeply and completely that you are not broken.
Oh, yes.
Understanding that there is nothing wrong with you, and we also can choose how we relate to ourselves and to our lives, and what we do want to strengthen in our ways of patterns in life. So I do see like a lot these healing journeys and addictions to the things like going from event to event, or container to container, or shadow work to shadow work, or plant medicine and plant medicine. It's needing to have that slowness for your nervous system to whatever you want to experience, to taking also time to integrate.
Yeah.
Like every time you go into something, allowing it to integrate, instead of simply like bombarding your nervous system and blowing your whole nervous system on the wall. That's not helpful when we come into healing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something I really want to highlight. Taking it slow and integrating. And there is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I know we have facilitators that are listening to this podcast, or those who have aspiration to hold space. Any words of wisdom for them?
I think there is the same kind of need of integration of things that we learn as well. I do see a lot, and even my own experience of, like immediately jumping from own experience into pushing it out into the world. At the same time, when we do have actually the responsibility to teach what we learn, it's not ours to own, but to getting to put it forward is a gift. But to really take the journey as like whatever you study, whatever you go into, what kind of rabbit hole you go into, is to really deeply embody it, and taking that time of integration, allowing it to settle into your bones, into the cells of your body before jumping out, because that will result in one way or another burnout of some kind.
Yeah, absolutely. And you blow your own system out. And I think, definitely have fallen into that one. And where you're almost in your process and you're like, this is the thing, this is the medicine. And you realize you're actually still being worked by the medicine as you're trying to birth the medicine. You're like, maybe not. Okay, I'm still in it. So yeah, we learned that one the hard way. But I was also thinking about how when you were saying you are not broken, a really key piece, I think, to tie. This is all about being in service to transformation, right? Of self and others. And I think that I feel that both those points that you've raised are just so beautiful, because that piece of you are not broken, actually, that is your medicine. So if we can have that lens applied of you're not broken, in fact, far from it, this will become part of your, the beautiful part of your journey that actually becomes service to others. And when you learn to embody it and you learn to integrate all of the learnings and the lessons, you do get to alchemize, and you do get to see how your pain turns into something quite beautiful that will help to heal others, the community around you, society at large, and the world ultimately. So it's a beautiful way to end. Thank you. Ah, what a lovely conversation. Thank you so much. I feel like I've learned more about you than I knew previously. There's just no end to the depths of these conversations that we seem to be able to have. And, you and I, we also have a podcast that we co-host. So really looking forward to bringing more of that through in the future. And that's morphing and changing a little bit, but as life does, we're going through a bit of a rebirth. But yeah, I'm just so grateful. So grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you.